Okay, so I'm actually live. So over the past month or so, I've been actively getting back into level reviewing, and I've been doing those reviews on my second channel. But I thought at the end of each month, I would do a recap of the month of levels that I reviewed, chuck them on a tier list because I know you all eat that shit up. So yeah, we're just going to get into it. So first level we have here is Wave Trip. This is a level that's very similar to Grains of Sand, but has a focus on the wave. The level builds up as the song builds up, as you would expect in Grains of Sand. I like how the color cycles are centered on the player, which you can see in this part here. Only part I really don't like is the click counter in the middle of the level. Doesn't really fit. I think that the effects in the level could represent the song a little better, so I'd say B tier. Next level is Demanu, or however you pronounce it. The low contrast in the first part makes me a bit concerned for low brightness devices, especially when the shaders hit and blows out the entire level. I do like how big the scale is using the hazing in the background, as well as just the general structure design. Everything feels quite grand. It's actually quite interesting to see in a design level, so I'd say B tier. Neochroma comes off as a much more amateur level. It's got framing issues sort of littered about everywhere. The level does have some interesting concepts though, which generally do show up when it's a creator with less experience. I really like how the zooming in and scaling up works. I feel like it shouldn't, but it just does. I'm not really big how some parts, like the spider, just use vanilla blocks when every other part has some kind of interesting design with it, and the lack of polish across the whole level does bring it down a notch, so I'd say C tier. Weird Fishes is an art level. It's really good in terms of its theme execution. It really feels like the level's underwater. I feel like a lot of levels struggle to do that, but it does it while still keeping it clean, not just making everything blue. There's a distinct lack of energy in the drop section. I get it's meant to be a strong current, so you think there wouldn't be fishes in there, but to play in the title of the level with the level itself, including some fishes that are absolutely losing control in the current, would have been a nice little comedic touch, so I'd say B tier. Reductant was one of the daily levels that I reviewed throughout the month. It's very high quality and it's very safe, which is what you come to expect with that kind of thing. There are a couple moments of interesting ideas, particularly in the middle of the level. It just would have been nicer to see those kind of ideas experimented more throughout the whole thing, so I'd say B tier. Burning Souls was definitely one of the better levels to come out this month. I really like how the spider pads are used in the gameplay as sync. You don't normally see that kind of thing in any level pretty much, how you have one instrument and it's one gameplay element associated with it. The overlays do a lot of the heavy lifting in this level to bring up the intensity, and I don't have a problem with that, it's fine. There's some light framing issues throughout the level though, particularly the dash orb transition, and the second part, the foreground, does cover up the background quite a fair bit, which is a problem because the piece in the background is sort of meant to serve as a transition into the following part, so the following part can be a little jarring, but these are minor things, it's still an A tier level. Camellia is another daily level that I reviewed. It's really clean and I like how the castle is integrated into the surrounding environment, how the structures feel more man-made as the level goes on. It sells the illusion that the player is getting close to the castle. I think that's really neat. My only concern is this transition feels very forced. I don't really know why it's done that way. And the snow particles, especially in the second half, they just don't really work that well with how they increase in speed horizontally. That just comes down to tweaking the particles. I think it'd be better if they were moving just at a constant speed, but otherwise it's an A tier. Ecstasy is a very basic but solid design level. I really like how the background changes speed throughout the level. It's not something that you see very often and it does a good job at increasing the energy of the level in a, I suppose, subtle way. I don't really like the background at the ending of the level though. I think it's just too intense for the song and it was quite off-putting for what I would expect to be sort of a winding down section. But I mean, overall it's still B tier. Flame is a very bare bones design level, but it uses a lot of small touches to make it stand out amongst the rest. One of the touches that I really do like is how in the beginning section of the level, it increases the saturation of some of the details in the blocks, and it really gives the feeling of heat in the level without explicitly going, oh, here's a bunch of fire. The same can be said for some of the movements and pulses in later sections of the level, like the ball. The shader usage throughout the level is very clean as well, especially on the powers in the cube section. I'm not a big fan of the lack of color in the drop. It just doesn't really feel like it's helping in presenting the idea that the level is hot, and it would have been nice even just some pulses to see, but I'd put it in B tier. Heartbreaker's another amateur level, but this one I can't really get behind. I've never really been a big fan of block mixing, using pixel blocks and regular blocks across the whole level. It looks a bit awkward. When there are sound effects used, it's not balanced very well with the music, and it does feel quite overwhelming and a bit out of place, even if it is properly representing what is happening in the level. I do like the soft movements in the beginning. It does set the tone of the level quite nicely, but I still think they're slightly too overtuned, too exaggerated, and I think just reducing the distance that the blocks move would sort that out, but I would still put this level in D tier. I really wanted to like Thinking Space too. One thing I can say is I really do like how faithful the level is to the original Thinking Space in terms of gameplay, and that comes from the odd movements that the level has, and then of course just the general difficulty balancing. I know it's significantly harder than the original Thinking Space, but I mean, from my experience, it does hold true to the easy first half, significantly harder second half and ending. The main thing I don't like is how this level just feels completely lost with where it is. It's in a cave, but it's in space, but also in a forest at the same time. It doesn't feel like there's any logic in a lot of the assets used, and the constantly changing environment is just not something I can really get behind unless if there's a good reason for it. The designs themselves feel very muddy, little variations on the shades of grey besides the outlines being a blinding white. Nothing in the designs really stand out to me, and it just looks a bit awkward. I would put this in D tier. Amethyst suffers from two big problems that I have with levels in this genre, which is the fact that the level just looks like it's in 480p unless if you're watching it on video, and I just can't get behind that, and the unclear hitboxes is just the cherry on top for that kind of thing. The second major thing is that it just suffers from Mega Collab Syndrome. I would say there's only one good part in the level, and I think that's only a result because it just sort of avoids all the other problems that the level has in terms of what I said earlier. I also don't like how the level is very frequently trying to shift the player's attention away from the gameplay layer, and it's not doing it in terms of like interesting assets, but it's just straight up flashbangs in the foreground that don't need to be there, which is again avoided in the middle part. I'd put this in C tier. I'm not pronouncing the name of this level, but it's a 2.2 memory level, and it just uses 2.2 mechanics exclusively, which separates it from Limbo, which I like quite a lot. I also like how the decoration is similar to the Chroma series, which happens to use the same song in the second level, I believe, so I think that's a nice callback, and overall the polish is really high. That's A tier. Quantuve's processing, I don't fucking know how to pronounce it. It's a blast processing remake, and it's pretty goofy with how the gameplay is. I just don't really like how the level is constantly shifting from a more serious look with this tech designs that you see in the first wave and the ship, and then going from just silly parts like the ending. It would have been nice to have the level be a bit more cohesive overall. For what is there, it's B tier. Through the Gates is an old level, but it still feels outdated even for 2018. It's basically no cohesion between any of the parts. It's just like build a part to this part of the song, awkwardly glue it together, and then hope for the best. It doesn't really feel like a full level. Also, why is there an end screen before the actual end screen? There's two end screens in this level. The Gates are mentioned 3 times, 2 of which are end screens. It's F tier. I like the fact that in Ashley Wave Trials, the monotone nature of the level makes it feel sterile despite the pulses, which makes it feel like it suits the level name, just the idea of it being a trial level. The change to spike slopes as the intensity increases is a really subtle change, but it does a lot in carrying the energy in that last part. Makes it very, very intense. Overall, it's a silly level, but it's executed well, so I'd say A tier. Kramer Factory is a classic 2.0 style level, but it's honestly a comedic masterpiece. It reminds me of CW 2003 GB levels. The gameplay concepts are neat with the shifting platforms and that kind of thing. I'm going to put this in B tier, but it's close to an A. Last work was, funnily enough, the last level I reviewed in May. I like the designs. I'm normally not a fan of these grid-based designs, but I think the area movements across the whole level do a fair bit of the heavy lifting to make them feel interesting. The click indicators are very much out of place in this level. They're slightly better in the second half, but don't follow the easings of the structures, so that feels a bit off. Just lacks that polish in general. Despite my earlier compliments on the movements, I wish it was a bit more ballsy. The overall vibe of the level doesn't match the actual vibe of the song. It just needs a bit more energy. Using bouncier movements, a level that I like to reference a lot is Saul Goodman by Red and More. That does a lot of movements in the structures to bring the energy up. So I think it's a level that the creator could reference for future works, but I'd say C tier. So that's every level that I reviewed during May. If you want to see the more in-depth reviews that may be more hateful or not, you'll see them on the second channel, which will be linked somewhere. And I'll see you next month.